must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Moeller, a writer and meditation teacher based in Washington, D.C., and welcome to Meditation for the Masses, where I take meditation and mindfulness out of places like Buddhist monasteries, expensive retreat centers, and corporate America, and into the lives of working people. The goal of this podcast is to make meditation more accessible to those who need it most. This episode is about how it's pretty much impossible, I would say, to use social media in a quote-unquote mindful way. If we want to spend less time unconsciously scrolling through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I think many of us do at this point, we have to work on being mindful before we even pick up the phone and log on to those apps. A few things before I get into it. Show notes are available at jeremymohler.blog. That's JeremyMohler, jeremymohler.blog/social media. In the show notes, you'll find a link to my original blog post that has a little bit more meat on the bones in this podcast and other important information about this episode. So, here we go. First things first, it really is nearly impossible to be mindful when you're on Facebook or Twitter. We should all agree on that. Social media platforms are literally built to churn out private profit for a handful of CEOs, founders, guys like Mark Zuckerberg, other big investors. So they are designed to get you to click, like, follow, all the things as much as humanly possible. Really push you to the limit in terms of how much attention they can grab from you and then grab it again with something else. And this is how they sell ads, right? There are entire teams of people in Silicon Valley, a bunch of tech bros sitting around in meetings day and night, trying to find ways to deliver more value for their investors. But what that really means is they're advertisers, and those advertisers pay to advertise on their platforms, and they're paying for your attention. So the commodity that these platforms like Facebook are producing is not technology. It's actually our attention for advertisers. And I was looking for some background on this before I recorded the podcast, and Sean Parker, who originally founded Napster back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and also then became the founding president of Facebook. Later this year at a conference, he said this: the thought process was, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? He was talking about the thought process at the beginning of Facebook. So it's not a coincidence that the notifications in many of these apps, if you think about Facebook in particular, at the top right of the screen, a lot of these notifications are in red, the color red, right? And that's, according to some researchers, an aphrodisiac, gets people excited. Might even give us a little dopamine hit. I used to work for tech companies that worked with the federal government, so not quite the Silicon Valley app bro scene, but still it was a tech company, and we would have meetings every day, literally every day of the week, trying to figure out how to squeeze more money out of our contracts and out of the labor on the contracts in particular. So getting your attention is what these social media companies are focusing on and meeting about every day. I've seen so many articles and tips and lists on how to mindfully use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I've seen things like setting an intention before you go on, or go in not expecting a certain number of likes, try to let go of the outcome when you post something. I think all this stuff is pretty useless. I think once you're on one of these apps, they've got you pretty much locked in. Like I said, they're spending millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on research every year, trying to figure out how to hold your attention more And the human mind just can't fight, a billions of dollar industry. So what I say is to be mindful before you actually pick the phone up, before you even go on Facebook. And the way to do that, of course, is to meditate. Hopefully meditate every day so that you spend more time in this mindful state. And being mindful is the key to picking the phone up less and going on Facebook less in the first place. But then also once you're on there, it's easier to pull away. And let me explain. So the more conscious you are, more mindful you are, the quicker you'll be able to notice how boring a lot of this social media stuff is. Social media is awesome and it's useful in so many ways. I've made so many friends, particularly in the left political scene here in DC. I've made a lot of friends through Twitter that then I met in real life at various events and things. And it's been a great way to connect professionally in that world for me, also in the meditation world as well. I also get a ton of my political news from Facebook at this point. Again, they've been trying to take over that industry and try to keep people on the platform and not going to Google to look at news. So that makes sense that I've been getting a lot of my news there. But it's very useful. I mean, I pretty much use Facebook for the most part to get what's going on in the world. At the same time, it's also a drain on your attention and energy because it's not all, relevant news or interesting things that are happening in other people's lives that are really close to you, baby pictures and wedding pictures and things like that. A lot of it is viral videos and just kind of pure entertainment stuff, which is awesome in so many ways. Cat photos and cat videos and dog videos are awesome. I welcome them as a break from all the news about Trump every day. But at the same time, I know you've felt this before where you sort of get lost in you go down the rabbit hole on cat photos and animal videos and stuff. And then you're just kind of scrolling through various videos and just kind of taking and being reactive, taking whatever Facebook gives you or whatever the next Instagram story is, in your Instagram or whatever the next Snapchat is. And you're just sort of grazing unconsciously on all this content. So I think the more mindful you are when you get to that point, because these apps are designed to do that, to push you content and get your attention, I think the quicker you're going to realize how bored you are looking at these cats or these, your friend's epic dinner or all the hot takes on what Trump tweeted today. And this is because mindfulness is a state of being aware of the open space that's always available to us. And what do I mean by the open space? Think about the last time you were with someone you loved and you felt complete and utter connection. Or maybe just a really great friend that was really listening to you and your problems. Or you were really listening to their problems and you were really there for them. That's what openness feels like. It literally feels like abundant, open space around you. Real freedom. Freedom to be yourself. Freedom for that other person to be themselves. So just a sense of spaciousness, right? Time doesn't seem to matter as much. You're not really checking your phone. You're not checking your watch, if you have one at this point. I do. But you're not really paying attention to time and the storyline of the day. You're really just in the moment and connected, and you feel that sense of space. The opposite of that, the opposite of openness, think about when you're responding to an email at work that's like really pissed you off. Like someone's written something really passive aggressive to get at you and blame you for something, and there's other people CC'd, and you're trying to figure out what to say back, and you're just filled with anger. Or maybe you get a text from your boss that you need to come in on the weekend. You need to pick up a weekend shift, and you're just pissed off, and you want to respond in a way that makes that person know that you're pissed off, but you feel like you can't. That's the feeling of a lack of space, right? Your shoulders might get tense, your stomach tightens up, your breath gets short. You basically forget that you have a body and that you're here right now, and you're really caught up in a storyline about how you need to prove yourself to this person and prove yourself to the world and stand up for yourself and all these other things, which may be the case, but you're still not in the moment. So the open space is the opposite of that. It's really feeling connected and open. And meditation practice in particular slows us down enough to feel that open space, to really tune into it and notice that it's there. So within a few minutes of meditating, you're able to see that most of the time we're filling that space with thoughts, with thinking and these stories, meandering thoughts, daydreaming thoughts, worrying thoughts. Instead of tapping into our senses and noticing the space, so instead of seeing around us, looking around, instead of smelling, instead of tasting, instead of hearing and feeling, we spend most of our time thinking. And it's often about the past or the future. So it's often replaying something that happened the day before or in the last week, perhaps a pretty tough conversation you had with somebody and you wish you had not said what you said, or maybe you said something different. Or you're worrying about something in the future. You're planning for something in the future. And what happens is these thoughts fill up that space. They basically become sort of a virtual reality that blocks out all these other sensations that fill our senses if we're just sitting there open to the open space. In meditation, like I said, in a few minutes, you'll start to see that the mind just wanders. It wants to think. It wants to process. It wants to figure things out. It's really just the habit that we have built into us as human beings. So being mindful is, and this happens in meditation, this is what the practice is pretty much for, is to see that those thoughts are just more phenomena. They're basically like, pretty similar to clouds passing in the sky or the bird chirping outside the window as you're meditating. They aren't necessarily true, and we have very little control over them. As I said, you'll notice as you meditate how they just pop up. And in fact, they often have control over us. Our thoughts do. They seem so real, this virtual reality, right? That we get caught up in them as if they were true, as if we were living in this sort of a movie and we were the main character. And we even think sometimes that they're more real than the cloud passing or the bird chirping. Literal like objects, things in the world around us. And we don't even pay attention to what's happening around us. But when we're not caught up, when we're not focused and lost in those thoughts, and we're sitting back with a relaxed attention, which could be called mindfulness, everything around us is more vibrant. We naturally become more curious because we have space to operate, right? So we're not filling that space with thoughts. We're not inside of the thoughts. We're able to see, hear, smell, taste, and most importantly, feel more. And from this spacious, mindful vantage point, from the sense of mindfulness, Trump's tweets aren't really that seductive. They might be funny and absurd and probably scary in a lot of cases, but they probably also are a little silly, and they're just words on a screen in our hand, right? So they're not so real at this point. The cat on the screen isn't as cute as the dog in the park across the street, or our friend's picture of their tacos from the taco stand doesn't smell as rich as the actual tacos at the taco stand down the street. Social media, when we're mindful, looks like a sketch. The photos, the videos, they're really interesting, but they're like a tenth or maybe less of the vibrancy of all the sights, smells, sounds, and tastes and feels that we can experience. Now, I want to put a disclaimer on this, and this should be a disclaimer on pretty much every podcast episode. And that is that we should practice all of this, and we should meditate, and we should try to be mindful with social media with self-compassion and compassion for ourselves. We should give ourselves a break. It's okay that on a rare break at work, all you can muster is mindlessly scrolling through Instagram. You just find yourself needing that break. It's similar to a cigarette break, right? Just need something different. And when you eventually realize that you're not present, and you will at some point, you can put the phone away and take a few deep breaths. You can try to pull yourself back into the moment. You can start to notice what's around you. You can focus on, this is a quick little exercise if you don't have time to meditate in that moment. You can focus on the cool air entering your nostrils, your nose when you breathe, and the warm air leaving. And just focus on in and out, and take 3, 4, 5 deep breaths, putting your attention on the breath. And that can bring you back in the moment. It's not going to make you mindful for the rest of the day, so don't have those sorts of expectations. Again, self-compassion. It's the hardest thing with all this practice. So that's all I've got on social media. Long story short, don't expect to use it mindfully. Just try to be mindful before you use it. And that should help. All right. Thanks for listening. A few things before you get on with your day. Make sure you're subscribed to Meditation for the Masses on iTunes or whatever app you use for podcasts. That's so you won't miss an episode. If you want more from me, sign up for my weekly email on meditation at jeremymoeller.blog/signup. My website also has free recordings of guided meditations and when and where I teach meditation in person. I generally teach in the Washington, D.C. area, but hope to expand my reach in the near future. And finally, please rate this episode on whatever app you use to listen to it. You might not realize how important that is. I spent years loving podcasts like The Tim Ferriss Show and The Dig without ever actually rating them, even though their host would ask me to rate them on every episode. Ratings make podcast apps recommend Meditation for the Masses to folks looking for podcasts on meditation. So it's really important to me. I deeply appreciate you listening. Thank you.